And we are live. Whew. And freezing. Well, it has warmed up to 45 Fahrenheit. I was sure that it was going to snow overnight, but we got wind and rain here. The snow was a little higher up on the mountain, and I'm still tired. Hi, Tora. Say hello to your adoring fans. Her buddy Sweetie is in the house, but Sweetie hates me. She doesn't like to stay in the house. She can't wait till I open the door and let the kitties, go play. Oh, Sweetie just laid a stinky in the litter box. Oh, well, it's in the other room, but in a house this tiny. Oh, God. Anyway, I'm very sorry I'm late. I overslept and I needed the sleep. Coffee and a cigarette. I'm usually on 2 hours earlier than this, but between the chilling cold and having my sleep patterns totally disrupted for several weeks, I just needed to stay asleep, and I had dreams, good dreams finally. You see, I have a YouTube playlist that I turn on at night, and it's all Christian stuff. Well, a couple nights in a row, the internet connection, my internet lost the connection. And while there was no Christian stuff playing, I had nightmares. And they seemed real. They were not like anything that could not happen in real life. Hi, Howard, in the chat. Oh, my cursor isn't in the box. Come on, mouse. Wake up, mouse. It's asleep too. Okay. The one I remember most clearly was that a man pulled out a handgun and fired off 5 shots at the bad guy. Apparently he missed because the bad guy jumped on the guy with the gun and tore him apart. Well, that part might have been something that would not happen in real life, but not necessarily. Hi, Oswald, in the chat. Well, if I had planned a day off, I would have recorded something and put it up to let you know. I just overslept. Anyway, that nightmare. And then the second one was something similar, but my memory of it is vague. Well, last night the Christian stuff stayed on, and I dreamed that my dad came to visit and he was proud of me, and I wanted to ask him some questions about his grandfather, but then I woke up. Darn. But I went back to sleep, and I dreamed that my dad, he passed away in about 7 years ago. The second dream, he took me to his friend's garden. Boy, is that biblical. And it had gorgeous red grapes, and it had tomatillos. which I'm not really into. They're kind of a relative of the tomato, but not a close relative. And they're used in salsa. That's about all I know about them. But then a friend, someone I knew, was there with me. A woman, I'm not sure who she was, but she was just thrilled and delighted with the tomatillos. Anyway, I wanted to pick some grapes, but I wasn't sure that I ought to, and then I woke up. Hi, Witta. Witta is here. That's what I think about. Uh, okay. Well, I did some research about free will during the week. It's kind of related to my exploration of the exegesis of Philip K. Dick. And it's a good thing I took some brief notes. Oh, and that isn't it. I folded it up and put it here. Okay. Ah. You see, along with the materialist model of, I don't know, I guess it's a philosophy. That doesn't belong there. Here we go. No. Ah. My notes are in here somewhere. That's my lotto tickets. I went ahead and bought a lottery ticket. Shame on me. Where's my notes? I bet I popped them over here so they wouldn't get lost. Well, they didn't get lost, except I forgot where I put them. Okay, come on, Bear. Ah, kitties. Cats. I got 2 cats in the house. I managed to let Sweetie come in to eat without letting Tora go out, which means that I was able to keep both cats inside on a night when you would want them inside. It's this box. All right, Tora. She heard the rattling of a bag of treats. The grocery store was nearly out of cat treats, and they had only 2 or 3 flavors. Here you go, right there. Hi, Sweetie. There's no way to pick her up and show you her, but Sweetie wants treats. There, here you go, kiddo. She only lets me somewhat near her when there are treats in my hand. Well, anyway, hope my internet connection holds up. Now that I've found my notes, 1 junior mint. Coffee breath already. Morning breath, I guess. Like that old Scope commercial. You know, the couple wake up in the morning and they want to kiss, but ooh. So they both grab the Scope and mouthwash and then they can kiss. Okay. If nothing in the universe is spiritual, if it's all material, and this is what really radical materialists say, whether they're scientists or science journalists. You don't have a mind separate from your brain. If something happens to your brain, it happens to your mind. Never mind the Japanese man who's often cited who literally has only half a brain. He has one hemisphere. I don't remember which one, but he's brilliant. I don't remember whether he's an artist or a scientist. Probably an artist. Never mind the stories of people who come out of comas when they had no signs of brain activity except maybe the basic, breathing and heartbeat. They wake up and say they heard everything you said for all those years. But their brain scan showed no activity. And I will not forget Terry Schiavo, who is deprived of food and water and allowed to die because her Catholic husband wanted to remarry, and the church wouldn't give him an annulment of his marriage to Terry Schiavo. That was the point at which I knew that our laws and our courts are, I really want to say a bad word that starts with F, but I'll just say evil. However, true dyed-in-the-wool materialists insist there's no mind, it's just your brain. I'll put it down for a minute. I shouldn't do that. I forgot where. Well, this was debunked in the mid-20th century. First with Wilder Penfield. Dr. Penfield was one of those surgeons who operated on the brain, primarily epileptics. That he would stimulate different areas of the brain to find out which small cluster of cells was the source of the epileptic seizures that were ruining the patient's life. And he found that touching certain cells would make an arm move or make a leg move or even make the person say a word. Well, he would touch and not really touch, stimulate with electrodes. Rather than the skull being open, he'd have electrodes, kind of like an EEG but much more sophisticated. He'd stimulate an area that made an arm move, and the patient could not see whether he had touched a button. So he would ask the patient, "Who moved your arm?" And the patient would say, "You stimulated me," or "You moved my arm." But when the patient was not stimulated and just moved an arm, every patient without exception knew the difference, whether he or she had decided to move an arm or whether it had been stimulated by the machine. That is called agency. Hi, Gil. You aren't late, Cardinal Sin. I'm 2 hours late. Don't worry about it. I overslept, and that's probably a good thing. I needed to catch up on sleep. My schedule's been totally wrong lately, and it's been cold. I'm talking freezing, cold enough to snow, and it's only October. Anyway, well, yeah, it's kind of like June. First half of June, it snowed. Second half of June, it was 90 to 100 degrees. Anyway, so when Dr. Penfield stimulated the brain and the patient moved an arm or a leg, the patient knew that it had been stimulated and it was not his or her decision. They knew the difference. That's called agency. Yes, all our body parts move, and people know whether they decided to move that body part or whether it was made to move from an outside agent. Then along came Dr. Sperry. Again, this is like 50 years ago or more. And they weren't originally experimenting with free will, but they found it. And there were some Nobel Prizes involved, and I didn't write that in my notes which one. I know Sperry got a Shut up, phone. I know Sperry got a Nobel Prize for his split brain research, which, of course, Philip K. Dick researched for his novel A Scanner Darkly. Yeah, little galvanism, Gil. Little. I've had, let's see, I had an EEG once. I had my head first crikey, like an x-ray, but they make slices because I had a head injury. And then the neurologist said, no, you go get an MRI. So my head they made an MRI of my head. I had fallen over backwards and cracked my skull, and this side of my brain swelled up. I might have had much more serious damage, but I still have a fontanelle, a soft spot on my skull where the bone has not closed up. I don't think I should tell you where it is. A blow to that soft spot could be fatal. Yeah, CAT scan first. Thank you, Gil. Anyway, this whole hemisphere swelled up, and I've been really weird ever since. I went to the neurologist a dozen times, and every time I could not find his office. I would take the bus an hour early because I wasn't even sure which stop I should get off at. And I'd get off the bus and walk around until I saw the building. And even then I wasn't sure until I walked inside and recognized the layout of the waiting room. I think I'm a little better now, but I do still get lost near home and just walk around till I find my house. Usually my cat runs out to greet me, and then I'm sure. Well, anyway, Sperry did this split brain research. Again, on epileptics, like Penfield. Again, 1960s. This guy got a Nobel Prize. Some epileptics have seizures that start in one hemisphere of the brain and then cross over the corpus callosum to the other side. And those are really devastating seizures. So to improve their lives, to at least localize the seizures in one side of the brain, they would cut the connections between the hemispheres. The corpus callosum is a bundle of nerves that allows the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere to communicate. Oh, I can set up my own computer, Gil. Don't need a technician. Honest. I have my old dead desktop computer that was given to me. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the guy. He had replaced his gaming computer with an even better one, and he shipped the computer, the monitor, the keyboard, everything to me by United Parcel in boxes. And I set it up. I'll never forget when I had a good job and a credit card, and I got a compact Presario? Yeah. At one of those stores that just sell computers. They don't exist anymore. You know, you had to buy the keyboard and the mouse and the monitor and the computer. I set it up, no problem. Hi. You get... Okay, well, if it comes with a technician, I'm going to have to get these boxes of stuff out of the house so there's room for it. You see, I've been, searching for, sorting, and either getting rid of or storing stuff because my house is tiny. It's the size of those tiny houses they build for homeless people. Anyway, so I have to have some warning so I can make room for my computer. Now, back to Sperry. You might remember in Philip K. Dick's novel, A Scanner Darkly, the drug, substance D, also known as substance death, eats the corpus callosum and splits the brains of its addicts. Well, Dr. Sperry, who won a Nobel Prize for his research, found that people with their brains split in half were not two people. They were still one person, but there were some very subtle differences. Now, even with the corpus callosum cut, so the two hemispheres don't talk to each other, there are some very there are some connections very deeply embedded in the brain. They aren't as efficient as the corpus callosum, and you can't really get to them and cut them. But with substance D in A Scanner Darkly, we posited that there was absolutely no connection. But Sperry found that even though these people did seem perfectly normal and their seizures were reduced considerably, there were some subtle differences. Oh my God, it's already shipped? Oh my God. Well, yeah, in New York especially, Oswald, tiny houses cost $1 million or more. Big cities. I don't have an upstairs. Let me just do one little thing. You see, I pay attention to my chat room. And it kind of takes me off track, but that's okay because you get to know what I get to know what you want to know and try to answer, and you get to guide the conversation. Okay. Anyway, back to Dr. Sperry and the split brain. Each of your eyes has two visual fields. And the optic nerve splits behind each eye, and one nerve goes to this side and one nerve goes to that side, way back in the back of your brain in the occipital lobe. So half of your eye talks to this side of your brain and half of your eye talks to that side. Sperry devised a system that would allow each eye to see only with the left brain or only with the right brain. And he found some interesting things. If only your right hemisphere saw a picture, you could not tell the researcher what it was because the right brain doesn't make words. That's the part of the experiment I remember best. Well, however, and Sperry did not investigate this, but it has been found that some people who grew up with severe brain damage don't have that problem. Whatever part of their brain works, it's doing everything. So it must have something to do with the fact that after a certain age, we're no longer growing. We do always make new brain cells, contrary to popular opinion. But at a certain point, you're not as adaptable as you were when you were a child. Del Inspiron, blah, blah, blah. Ooh, 16 gigabytes of RAM. My little laptop has about 5, but it was cheap. And by the way, someone bought this laptop for me a couple years ago. I'm really struggling, especially now that winter heating bills are starting early. It was like 35 degrees overnight, maybe a little colder. Now it's 45. Bluetooth. DVD-RW. Excellent. I don't do Blu-ray anyway, although they tell me Blu-ray players are backward. There's a word for that. They'll play DVDs. Windows 10 Pro. FedEx. Oh, now I'm going to have to copy all this stuff from chat. Okay, and you're sidetracking me again, but that's okay. Let's see. Computer details. I'm going to email it to myself. That way I don't lose it. Okay. That should do it. Well, my brain is sort of recovered. It's been at least 10 years since my head injury, and it was severe. And I was at a little shopping mall, family owned, and I got less than the cost of my medical bills and had to go bankrupt because, of course, I couldn't work for a couple years after the head injury. Well, my old desktop is dead. The hard drive goes crunch, crunch, crunch. So if I gave it away, I would have to give it to someone who can buy and install a new hard drive. The new ones don't spin, so they don't end up going crunch, crunch, crunch. Hi, Dave. Diecast In Racing League is here. You're not very late. I've been on half an hour because I overslept. Okay, so we got Penfield, Weiler Penfield. Dr. Penfield showed that your brain didn't decide to move your leg. Either the researcher stimulated it with an electrode on your brain, or you decided to, and everyone could tell the difference. Dr. Sperry showed weird things with the split brain. Now, I forget how that relates to free will, but it does. People would cheat, sometimes unconsciously, and manage to see the object with both eyes and talk about it. But when their fields of vision were properly separated, if your right hemisphere saw something, it couldn't tell you about it because your words are over here. Except that Japanese guy who literally has half a brain, only one hemisphere. Anyway, and other people with brain damage who have recovered, even though you're probably not going to recover from a split brain through surgical cutting of the corpus callosum. Your brain will adapt and allow you to live a perfectly normal life, as these epileptics did when their seizure activity was reduced by splitting the brain. Then along came Leibniz. Free will. Definitely free will. He set up an experiment where people would decide to push a button while a big elaborate headset recorded their brainwaves. And the brain activity would light up before they decided to push the button. So these subjects in the study would first decide to push the button and then push it. But the brain activity happened before they decided. I'm not sure how he measured that, but he did. I guess they'd say a word when they had decided. Oswald is convinced that all the bureaucrats have only left brains. I don't know, some of them appear to have only right brains and no common sense. the ones that scream and cry when they don't get their way in Congress. That's off the track, though. So what Leibniz did, okay, the brain would light up, then they'd decide, and then they'd push the button. So materialists used that to prove that we don't have free will because the brain did it first. But Leibniz took the study one step farther. Decide to push the button and then change your mind and decide not to. So they would decide to push the button, decide not to, and not push the button. The brain would light up when they decided to push the button. Actually, it seemed to be like a 10th of a second before they decided. But the brain had no response when they canceled the decision. The brain did not know that they had changed their minds. So what Leibniz says is, well, we might not have free will, but we sure do have free won't. Because the brain had no clue. So that lighting up of the brain might have been something related to actually moving your arms, your hand, your fingers. You know, your brain sends the signals to move your arms, your hands, your legs, etc., and your mouth, and to form words. Cardinal Sin says VGA. I have a monitor and I know how to connect it. I might have to get my own keyboard and mouse, we'll see. But I'm good on computers. And if there's a technician to set it up, okay, all good. I'll just make sure there's room for it. I'm looking forward to having a robust computer. I don't know what to do about my shaky internet connection. I have wireless, and on the mountain it can be a crapshoot. Okay, Gil, I gotta scroll up to see the rest of the conversation about the computer. Yeah, Cardinal Sin and I discussed the computer thing in detail. Well, I have 2 webcams, but, and this is a big but, remember last year when I was out with a broken hip and somebody went through every drawer, shelf, cupboard, box, and bag in my house and moved everything? I haven't found either one of my webcams. I don't know where they went. I do have a microphone that I got with an Amazon gift card. It's a cheap one, but it's supposed to be really good. The brand is Tonor. It has a little windshield thingy. Suppresses things like coughing and wind and ambient noise. It isn't bad at all for under $30, including the tax. God bless the person who gave me the Amazon gift card. I did earn a few gift cards taking surveys and watching ads. You know, I get like $3 or $5 here and there. And it's always an Amazon gift card because PayPal doesn't like them. Let's see. Witta says, La Brutes has an article, Does Free Will Exist? Neuroscientists debunk popular argument against free will. Well, most of us in our daily lives experience ourselves as something outside our brains. Now, I know that isn't scientific, but really, the scientific method didn't even exist before 1600 when Galileo decided that scientists, although he said mathematicians, but that's another story, should follow this rigorous method. And anything that doesn't follow that method is not science. Hold on a minute. My sinuses are being evil. That's better. Oops. Oh, Tora's boyfriend is at the door. She doesn't like him, so he's not allowed to come in until Tora's ready to go out. Well, anyway, everything we do from the moment of birth is science in the sense of seeking knowledge. Oswald says, free will is like IQ. Neither side of the argument has a good definition of the term. Yeah, well, I've got an IQ of 160, but that and $5 will get me a cup of coffee. Phil was jealous. His was only 120. Yes, we both had IQ tests because we were studied as children. Ugh. And mine was when I was 15, so I was close enough to adulthood that it counts. IQ tests of small children don't really count when you've grown up. You have to take the grown-up test. Well, I took the grown-up test. Like, you have these measuring cups of different sizes, and how do you measure out so much water with them when not one of them matches the amount you want to get? If they gave me that test today, I'd say, I don't care. I'm going to go buy a 2-quart measuring cup. But I was a kid, at heart at least. Robert Anton Wilson said of the audience, I know you all know what the carpet tastes like. Ew. Ew. Well, anyway, the scientific method is you make some observations, which was a good step. Started with Copernicus. Before that, the Greek philosophers, which is what the Greeks called scientists, well, they sat around and thought rationally and logically about how the universe should be. Copernicus said, well, let's take a look at the stars and planets and see how they really are. That's a good start. Then Galileo said, you have to test it. Well, you come up with a theory about the things you observe and you test it. because, well, it isn't a theory. They call it, I think they call it a theorem or a, whatever. Can't think of these words, and they aren't important. Well, then you test it, because for a theory to be scientific, it has to be falsifiable. So you test it, and you either prove it or disprove it. And if you prove it, you go on to spread your theory far and wide over more things that you can observe, and so on and so forth. And you have to have like a control group. You have 3 groups. One who gets the medication for pharmaceuticals, one who doesn't, and a group of doctors who don't know who is which. A blind study. Well, most of us don't do that, and yet we know that the sun's going to rise in the east and set in the west. And that's how I know that the glowing red-orange globe I saw when I was 6 years old was not the moon. The moon does not rise in the north. Mom always told me our backyard faced south, but I checked it on the map, and it faced north. Mom lied about things that weren't even important because that's just what she did. Screwed up my life. Oh, I see. When we're babies, we all taste the carpet. Well, I think he was assuming your house had a carpet. Our house had wood floors, and there was a rug in the middle. And I remember when they put in carpet. My grandparents got new carpet and gave us their old carpet. It was cleaned, thoroughly cleaned, and installed. Yes, I remember the first time I ever walked instead of creeping. And by the way, we call it crawling, but scientifically, crawling is wiggling around on your belly. You creep on hands and knees, but it sounds weird. So I just say I was crawling on hands and knees. I wanted to see out the window, the front window of our living room. So I grabbed the windowsill, and lifted myself up and looked out. And then I discovered, hey, I don't have to plop back down. I can walk. And I did. I was about 8 or 9 months old. And yes, I remember that. I also remember that year my brother started kindergarten and brought home measles, mumps, and chicken pox. Back then, the children just got those diseases. We didn't have vaccines. Anyway, I'm still here. I didn't appreciate having mittens on my hands to stop me from scratching the chickenpox blisters. Oh well. A theorem is a mathematical statement that has been proven. A theory is a scientific model of the world that's been well tested. Yeah, well, math used to be science. Galileo called scientists mathematicians. And you show me one peer-reviewed study in one well-respected journal that doesn't have charts, graphs, and math. Scientists use math all the time and then say, oh, but it isn't a science. Okay. Pythagoras and Aristotle and those guys, they used math all the time. Pythagoras was a scientist who developed geometry. Well, anyway, there's a word for your speculation based on what you see. and I can't remember it. Oh, come on, my evil mouse is playing games on me. Get off me. There's a thingy hiding my chat. Yeah, I know you're having trouble reloading. I don't want that loaded. Okay. There, I got the chat back. Yeah, math is a language. When I taught English, I used to compare grammar to math, especially for the Chinese and Japanese students, because I knew they might have trouble with English, but they were good at math because their parents made them study it. And they didn't have a life because they were studying math. Well, anyway, Galileo set the scientific method in stone, and we've been there ever since. When most of us just taste something, ew, yuck, never eaten that again. That's science. You sought knowledge and you found it. Or we eat chocolate or whatever you love to eat, strawberries or tomatoes or whatever. Oh, that's good. I'm going to eat that every chance I get. That's science. And it doesn't follow the method, but it works. I don't remember what the carpet tastes like, but I've been on my hands and knees scrubbing things like spilled red punch or cat pee, so I know what that smells like. Oh, English is the result of imposing Latin grammar on a Celtic language and then screwing it up by throwing in a whole bunch of French because of William the Bastard, who became known as William the Conqueror. And bastard is not a bad word, it just means your father didn't marry your mother. Although the English meant it as a slur. And then, one of the Edwards conquered France and screwed up our language and theirs. He didn't exactly take over France, but he demanded, I think it was his son had to marry the French king's daughter, something like that. Or his daughter had to marry the French king's son. Yeah, that's what it was. So France ended up with an English queen and a dauphin, a crown prince, who was French. Good for you, Gil, as a kid teaching the other kids. Yeah, scientism and scientists these days, I don't trust them. They're wedded to what some expert told them when they were young. Well, I'll tell you what science does. Science used to talk about the Andromeda Nebula, a cloudy formation of stars on the edge of our solar system. Until the 1920s, when someone actually looked at it with a good telescope. I believe it was the 100-inch reflecting telescope at Mount Wilson. Oh, it isn't cloudy at all. It's a spiral nebula, and it's a galaxy. Look at that parallax. It's way outside our solar system. And other nebulas, oh my God, they aren't part of the Milky Way. We are not the only galaxy in the universe. Wow! Took a while for Einstein to accept that redshift and the parallax. First, that they were that distance, according to the parallax, the difference between what it looks like when you view it from Australia and when you view it from New York, when you stand, for example, in your yard and you're way out on the right-hand edge, and then you look at the same view from way out on the left-hand edge, it's different. That's parallax. Nebulas or nebulae. You misspelled it, Gil, but my mouse is being evil. Get back in the box, mouse. I say nebulas because I speak English and nebulae is Latin. So there. A lot of scientists just split the difference and call the plural nebula the same as the singular nebula. Anyway, there's all these galaxies, and the light is shifted to the red. They're moving away from us, and Einstein threw a fit because he wanted the steady state universe. And really great genius level astrophysicists, astronomers fought against the red shift. AE in Latin is I. I studied Latin. Of course, I don't pronounce it perfectly, but A. Nebulae is nebulae. And if you put an I on the end, it's nebulae, but that isn't a real word. No, nebulae would have an I on the end, and it doesn't end in I, so there. It ends in AE, so it's nebulae. My Greek was only 1 year and not so great, really difficult. Plato's Greek, not modern. But I studied a lot of Latin and I was good at it. So don't argue with me unless I'm really wrong. And I can be wrong. I make mistakes all the time. But not on nebulae. I studied Latin and astronomy. Anyway, these guys wanted the steady state theory, so what's his name? The Black Cloud. It was a novel he wrote. I blanked on his name. Help! Chat room, who wrote The Black Cloud? Funicula, funiculi. That's one of those songs that are ridiculous. You know, where the moon hits you in the eye like a big pizza pie. Who wrote The Black Cloud? Famous astronomer. Well, I guess you're all too young. I think he was dead when I was born, but maybe not. He was definitely old. Yeah, he was still alive in the 60s. Hoyle, Fred Hoyle, thank you, Oswald. Fred Hoyle decided that, okay, everything's moving away, but the universe likes to maintain a consistent density. So when things get too far apart and the density gets too low, the universe creates matter in the spaces in between. Spontaneous creation. In the C field, the creation field, it's kind of like quantum physics where things pop in and out of existence. Thank you, Oswald. I couldn't Google it because my internet connection's so sketchy today. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Witta, Oswald found it. Okay, Fred Hoyle. So, spontaneous generation of new matter, so that even though everything's flying apart, because the redshift says so, It's still a steady state universe because new matter is created. And some people still believe that. Hoyle believed it to his dying day, but one of his partners he had two partners in developing his theory, and I'm sorry, their names are totally gone from my mind, but one of them finally capitulated and said, yeah, there must have been a Big Bang. Well, they hated the idea of the Big Bang. That meant there was a beginning, and they couldn't explain where the universe came from. And they certainly didn't want to go to in the beginning, God. That was taboo, totally off the table. No way, Jose. My water's empty. I'll be right back. Dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a new theory of the universe? Well, and then there were theories. I haven't figured out what Roger Penrose is saying. I've tried to listen to his lectures on YouTube. I thought he was for free will, but I listened to his lectures and it seems like he's against free will. Stephen Meyer, yeah, he's he's not a Christian, but he's come to the conclusion through his science that the origin of the universe had to come from God. And the best concept of God to fit that, the way the universe is arranged and the way life originated and has all these different forms and features, is the God of the Bible. Yeah, young Earth creationists, well, 6,000 years isn't in the Bible. The Bible doesn't say how old the universe is. It doesn't even say how old the Earth is. I think we can assume that the universe was already here when God created the Earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was without form and empty. Some Bibles say void. That means empty. Well, anyway, it doesn't say when he created Adam. He just did it. But interestingly, the first thing, that's like background. The first thing God created, and God said, let there be light. That fits the Big Bang model of the universe, that the first thing was light. Anyway, scientists don't like the ones who worship in the hallowed halls of science don't like the idea that the Bible got it right. But it doesn't say how old the earth is. And like hundreds of years ago, this Irish bishop named Usher with 2 S's went through all the genealogies and calculated that the earth must be about 6,000 years old. The Jewish calendar has the age of the earth somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000, but that's really their calculation of the existence of Hebrews, the children of Abraham, or the descendants of Adam. But the genealogies have gaps. Not everybody is in them. The important people are in there. Like who was around when the sons of God made babies with human women and evil was everywhere. And then there was a flood. And then some idiots built the Tower of Babel. So God scattered them and confused their languages. Land of Nod and East of Eden. Well, actually, East of Eden is a movie. The Bible talks about Eden in the East. Many Native Americans claim that the Garden of Eden was somewhere in South Dakota. So go figure. We don't know where the Garden of Eden was. We don't know where Noah built his boat. We only know where the boat landed. And yet people just assume that Eden must be in the Middle East. Somewhere in the desert, there's an oasis called the Garden of Eden. Not necessarily. We don't know where it was. Might not even have been on this planet. But that's another story. Oh, yeah. Bavel in Russian, the V is what we call a B. I'm not good at Russian, but I remember that. It's like a softer B. In German, the letter that we write as V is pronounced like F. It's a thou. And W is what we call V. It's a they. Yeah, Babel is Babylon. We have many weird words because the British colonists never called anything what the native people called it. For example, today we have a country called Myanmar. The British still call it Burma. I guess they couldn't pronounce Myanmar. The Chinese don't call their country China. We call it China after the first Qin emperor who unified the various states that make up China today. And by the way, they still hate each other. Tiananmen Square, the first time the government sent in the troops and the tanks, the soldiers refused to harm the students who were protesting. They were all members of the same tribe. So, the second time, the government sent in troops from a province where they hated the people who were protesting in Tiananmen Square. They were different tribes, and they massacred the students. So even today, they hate each other. They aren't all Chinese. Even here in America, yes, we're all Americans, but some people like to divide us by our funny accent or our strange rituals or habits or diets or skin color but I think we're a bit more united than China. In fact, I'll bet you our troops would have a difficult time conducting a massacre of student protesters. Even at, why don't I remember that? 1960s peace protests, that college where the girl put a little flower on the end of the National Guard troops' rifle, and later she was shot. 2 or 3 students were shot. In Tiananmen Square, the tanks rolled over the students and crushed them to death. All of them, except those who managed to flee. Bavel? That's interesting, Cardinal Sin. Han Chinese, Poo UCLA, Berkeley. No, it wasn't Berkeley. I think it was in Minnesota. Oh dear. Kent State. It was in the 60s, protests against the Vietnam War. Then there was the Wounded Knee protest where Native Americans were protesting because, let's face it, our government treated them badly. The Wounded Knee massacre was our hero, in quotes, General Custer, massacring a village of mostly women and children because he couldn't win the fight against the Braves. And then there's General Sherman's scorch and burn policy toward the end of the Civil War. The North won by burning down people's homes and killing their crops, so they were homeless and starving. The worst of it was in Georgia, but it was everywhere, and Sherman went on to massacre whole clans of Native Americans. We had wars against the Indians, the Indian Wars. Now when I say Indian, I have to specify East Indian or Asian Indian. Oh, wow. Hi, Poo Poo. I didn't realize Poo Poo was a chatter and not something someone typed. Oh, come on. Give me my mouse. Scorched earth policy. Well, that's how the Russians defeated the Nazis, but the Russians did it to their own land twice. Well, first against Napoleon. Napoleon marched into Moscow and it was burning down. And it was winter, there was no food for his troops, there was no shelter, there was nothing. And then against Hitler. Well, that was the Soviet Union then. Well, Hitler sends his troops in, and at one end of Stalingrad, the war was going on. At the other end of the city, women and children were And old people were building tanks and sending them out to the front lines. And the Russians held Stalingrad. I think, Oswald, I think our governor Newsom just declared Native American Day. No, he didn't call it that. He called it Indigenous People. Yeah, just like Oregon. I think that happened on the day. I'm not certain whether it was really official, but I don't care. Columbus was slandered. Yes, he finished his life in prison in Spain, but is it Spain or Portugal? I guess Spain. But he was framed. His junior officers were responsible for most of the crimes. The Spanish and the Portuguese both ordered their explorers to treat the native people with respect, and they had severe punishment for those who disobeyed and mistreated the natives. Oh, poo-poo's your kitty cat. Yeah, cats do tend to poo-poo. Yeah, well, yes, Gil, Hitler made the same mistake Napoleon did. You can't fight a war on two fronts. He was still fighting against the English in the west and decided to march into Russia in the east. But Hitler was buying into the mystical Falderall that the German fire will melt the Russian ice. And even so, Hitler might have succeeded in taking Moscow, but he decided to turn his troops southward into the Ukraine to take Sebastopol, which, by the way, is even today is Russia's only warm-water port. It's in the Crimea, where Russia fought the Crimean War. The Ukraine, shortly before our Civil War of the 1860s, the Ukraine was a satrapy of the Ottoman Empire. Turkey controlled it. Now look on the map, there's this Black Sea in between Turkey and the Ukraine. I think it's the Black Sea. Could be the Caspian. I think it's the Black Sea. Anyway, in the winter, Russia cannot send ships, whether they're merchants or military, out of their other ports because they're iced up. Russia is way up north. Siberia has permafrost. Anyway, the only port they can use in the winter is Sevastopol in the Crimea, which is the northern part of the Ukraine. So, yeah, even though Stalin wiped out the Ukrainian farmers who used to be the breadbasket of the world in a deliberate campaign of starving them to death, and I understand there's a lot of ill will still in the Ukraine. The Ukraine was not an independent country that Russia conquered. They were a colony of Turkey that Russia liberated. So I think Russia has a right to use that warm water port in Sebastopol. Besides, most of the people there are ethnic Russian because that monster Stalin killed off the Ukrainians. It isn't because Russia is being bad. Well, maybe today they are. But it's a little more complicated than Ukrainian liberation from Russian domination. That's so simplistic, it would be laughable if it were not so serious for the people involved. Wow. We were talking about free will. Let's see. Oswald says St. Brendan, the navigator of Clonfert, discovered the New World before Columbus anyway. Well, so did the Vikings, and the Siberians, and the Chinese, and the Japanese. Well, maybe not the Japanese. Well, they could have, but they tended to be insular. They didn't like communicating with outsiders. You know, Philip K. Dick's mainstream novel, The Man Whose Teeth Were All Exactly Alike, has a character. One of the main characters is based on a teacher he knew in Point Reyes Station, a high school teacher who found what he said were ancient Chinese artifacts on the California coast. And they laughed him out of the room for that. He barely kept his job. And once in a while, someone discovers on the ocean floor, but in shallow water, something that looks an awful lot like a ship's anchor. A round stone with a hole in the middle that the Chinese used to use to anchor their ships in port. It's almost generally accepted now that the Chinese did visit the west coast of the United States in ancient times. Russian meddling? Meddling? I don't know what meddling is. Meddling. Propaganda. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about COVID, and I think the biggest one is that, oh my God, COVID's gonna kill us all. That's the real conspiracy theory. It's no more deadly than the seasonal flu, even if you accept the inflated figures that the governments put out. You know, like someone who's in the hospital for hernia surgery tests positive for COVID. Oop, it's a COVID patient. Someone dies in a car accident, but tests positive for COVID. Oop, he died of COVID. The French COVIDians. You have to be a certain age to understand that joke, Oswald. I refuse to worry because worrying never fixed anything. I prepare, but I don't worry about it. Okay, where were we? We were on Russia and Ukraine. You guys sidetracked me real good. This was about free will. Oh, yeah, the man whose teeth were all exactly alike. They find this skull and they think it's a Neanderthal, but it turns out that it's a very recent skull. Probably someone who was murdered. Or else a grave got dug up. But it's modern, not a Neanderthal, but there's pollution in the water. And when Phil lived in Marin County, the drinking water, the tap water, really was polluted, and he was involved in the protests to get their water cleaned up. But he based a great deal of that novel actually on Ibsen's play, An Enemy of the People. And I was going to reread it to refresh my memory, but I forgot. But I do know that the enemy of the people, the main character, the victim, the hero, was involved in the water supply for his city. And of course, for being a hero, he got convicted. I don't think they killed him. I think they sent him to prison, but I haven't read the play in ages. Yeah, Jonestown. Jonestown was horrible. Let me I forgot what I read in the chat. I have to go look at it again. Something Oswald said. Yeah, Branch Covidians. The Branch Davidians were this weirdo cult. Was it Arizona? New Mexico? Somewhere around there. David Koresh set himself up as the prophet. Well, our federal government decided they should rescue those children from that cult by bombing the building where the children were hiding, setting it on fire and burning it down with the children inside. Great job. Great job, federal government. You rescued those children by killing them all. And nobody paid any price for that disaster. Just like today, Janet Reno, yeah, and Bill Clinton, and Hillary. That's why we call her Hitlery. You know, it's funny. YouTube lets me go more off script than Facebook does. If I typed those words in Facebook, they'd be deleted and I'd probably, be not allowed to post for a week or two. YouTube is more, I guess Google doesn't hate me as much. I don't know. They pretty much leave me alone. Yeah, Hitlery, Killery. Texas. Thank you, Witta. Waco. That's right. Yeah, well, they're actually Seventh-day Adventist heretics. There was long before David Koresh, there was a prophet named Koresh who broke off from Seventh-day Adventism. Beware anyone who sets himself up or herself up as a prophet. What the Hebrews used to do, the Israelites, that is, if a guy claimed to be a prophet, but what he prophesied wasn't true or didn't come true, they stoned him to death because he was a liar, like the devil. Yeah, I know YouTube has been, first they demonetized the channel so you can't make money off it. Well, I'm not monetized, so maybe they don't notice me. And I don't have thousands of subscribers. But yeah, they have been taking off entire channels. Most of them went over to locals.com. Thing is, Locals doesn't have the budget that YouTube does, so their videos, I have trouble playing some of them. They keep stalling, and I get the hourglass, and it isn't my connection, it's theirs. As they grow and make more money, they'll get more bandwidth on their end, and it'll be better. But the new members on Locals are very limited in how many minutes they can post in a video. So a lot of them are posting text because they can only do so many minutes of video. And I understand that. It costs money for Locals to upload and play your videos. Oh, Oswald, have a great week. See you later. Okay. I've been on for an hour and a half, guys. And I'm not exactly rambling yet, but I'll get there. I was 2 hours late this morning, and I was afraid my internet connection would give out. As people wake up and more people are using the internet, our cell towers have only so much capacity. Even Verizon, it even costs them money to provide service. That's why they charge us for it. Yeah, I tried, I think I signed up at Odyssey. I haven't really tried visiting Odyssey. BitChute and Rumble, and then there's that one that's suing, Parler. I know I signed up for Parler, but I've never actually gone to the site. I got tickles. Probably cat hair. Story of my life. Everything's covered in cat hair and kipple. Well, anyway, free will. In A Scanner Darkly, of course, the main character actually becomes two people, even though Sperry showed in his Nobel Prize winning experiments on the split brain that you're still one person. But of course, A Scanner Darkly is fiction. So Bob Arctor doesn't realize that he is the same person as Fred, the undercover cop. And he's spying, and Fred doesn't realize that he's spying on himself. Hi, Jan. I'm almost done today. Time to get some food into me and maybe do something useful. I have to pick up my mail and stop at the credit union. Yeah, well, I overslept, Jan. I'm not sick, but I woke up at it was almost 10 o'clock. I went, uh-oh, because I've been deliberately coming on at 8 instead of 9, and here I am at 10 instead of 9. Let's see, now it's almost noon. I don't know what to tell you. I guess I needed the sleep. I had some good dreams. I dreamed that my dad was proud of me. How good can that get? Can anything get better? Well, I usually come on live on Tuesday mornings. I was doing 9 o'clock Pacific, but lately I've tried to switch to 8 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday mornings. But once in a while, I will come on or record something at a random time. Yeah, of course, if I dreamed that Mom said she was proud of me, I wouldn't believe her. It's like all my adult life, it was, Mom, you already raised me. You don't get a do-over. Dad was not very expressive, like when we tried to get him to talk about the UFO that he saw. It had to be before 1959. He owned a gas station in the valley, and by 59 he had a job at a factory. The gas station failed. He was a pretty good auto mechanic, and he said it was in the valley. So I'm thinking either San Fernando Valley or San Gabriel Valley. Possibly Lancaster, but I don't remember him ever naming the city. Anyway, so somewhere before 1959, he and his buddy who were working at the gas station looked up. I guess they heard the sound of it. Looked up in the sky and saw the strangest aircraft. It didn't have any wings. It was like a silvery metallic cylinder, just kind of floating slowly across the sky. It had windows, and I asked him, well, were there any, faces looking out of the windows? And he said he couldn't tell. He couldn't see through the windows. And that's about all he said about it. And around the same it must have been around the same time as the angel hair that fell in the valley. It looked like spider webs or cotton candy, but it was white. Some people said it was manna. It fell to the ground, and Dad's cousin was living there and picked some up and put it in a jar, but it evaporated and was gone within hours. And that was a documented, I guess, UFO case. They came from the sky, but it wasn't a spaceship. The UFO that I saw also was not a flying saucer. It was an orange-red glowing globe. I thought it looked like Mars because they always called it the red planet, and I was 6 years old. Mom said, oh, you just saw the full moon and it looked real big because, well, there's no harvest moon in August, and the moon doesn't rise in the north. And it was coming down. And I think my brother and I have some missing time, at least missing memory, with regard to that incident. But all my life, I just kind of put it on the back burner. whatever, I was 6 years old, maybe I imagined it, until I learned that it was a documented widespread sighting from Northern California down into Baja, Mexico, Baja, California. Police officers saw it, thousands of citizens saw it, and there was more than one. There were many, and some were not globes, some were like boxes, box-shaped. That was 1960, and it was August. Well, Jan, you have daylight saving, and in Australia, it's tomorrow. I'm pretty sure for you it's October 13. For me, it's October 12. There's the little international date line. So maybe it's Wednesday where you live. It's Tuesday here. Yeah, Howard, I think I have missing time in several of my childhood experiences and perhaps adult experiences too. But I've decided firmly not to try hypnosis to recover the memories because it's too likely that I'd end up with false memories. Temporal lobe seizures. Maybe. I don't have temporal lobe seizures. What I have is called parasomnia. When I was a child, they called it daydreaming. I don't walk in my sleep, but I do have this tendency to dream while I'm awake. If I sit down and relax, even if someone's talking to me, or even if I'm watching a movie or a YouTube video, I'll suddenly be dreaming. I'm in another place with other people, and there's stuff going on, and they're talking to me. And it doesn't seem to matter whether my eyes are open or closed. It was worse when I was a child. I'd be sitting in the classroom, and the teacher would be lecturing, and I lived in fear that she would call on me to answer a question because I hadn't heard it, even though I was focused on her, looking at Mrs. Novak's. That was where it happened most often, 4th grade. And then suddenly I'm in another place with other people. Isn't quite that bad nowadays. If I'm paying attention, it doesn't happen. It's when I relax and I'm just taking in a movie or a video or what someone's saying. And it's usually now when I'm alone and relaxed and not really focused. But I'm not asleep. I believe it, Jen. A lot of children are like, quit daydreaming. From, the adults will yell at them, quit daydreaming. And like Walter Mitty, they can't help it. A hypnotist who isn't really well trained, doesn't really know what he's doing, can, even without meaning to, put ideas into your head, especially if they're interested in UFOs. Instead of saying, what do you see? They'll say, oh, is the alien green with long ears? And being under the spell of the hypnotist, you'll say yes just to make him happy. They remade Walter Mitty? Shame on them. Nobody in Hollywood has an original idea unless they steal it from someone else. Temporal lobe epilepsy is a different thing entirely. Some people think Phil had that. It wasn't epilepsy. It was probably parasomnia. Parasomnia has a wide range of symptoms, all the way up to and including sleepwalking. But what I'm talking about is a mental thing, where you're dreaming even though you're awake. I didn't have a name for it before, but it isn't a seizure. It's just something your brain does to you, or maybe your mind does it to you. They don't deliberately practice leading questions, and the example I gave was much more extreme than what you'll find. But there is a tendency when you're hypnotized to want to please the hypnotist, and it can be dangerous. Well, I've never had it when I was driving, Howard, but I don't know. I hope not. There is a thing called road hypnosis that can happen to anybody, especially at night when you're on a long straight highway where everything looks the same. You will believe that you're seeing the road ahead, but you are not. You're seeing what you remember seeing back there. And if something different does arise, it'll startle you if you happen to see it. So when I used to do long distance driving to visit family up north, whether the 5 or the 99 going north in California, I would stop, get off the freeway at a little town where there was nothing but a gas station, just to break up the monotony of the road. Yeah. Thing is, even if they just ask for more detail, you might make up a detail that wasn't there to please the hypnotist, even if the hypnotist is all on the up and up. Now, Bud Hopkins did a good job, and I'm not knocking Bud Hopkins. He did an excellent job. I question whether his subjects really didn't conflate what they thought they should have seen with what they actually saw. Well, not recently, but as a child, I've been contacted by people who claim to be aliens, but they looked human to me. So, no, I've never seen a gray or a green, little green man with the pointy ears. When I was very young, little toddler, there was an angel who used to talk to me. He didn't talk about God or any of that, but he did tell me that there were demons. The house was demon infested, and he was protecting me from them. Years later, apropos of nothing, my older and smarter brother mentioned that the house was infested, our childhood home. I thought he meant cockroaches or roof rats. Nope. Both of us separately and without communicating to each other had experienced nothing specific, just an overwhelming sense of dread, way beyond fear, when we were alone in that house, especially in the bedroom that I ended up with. And we moved across town when I was, 8 years old, halfway to age 9. That house, after we had moved out of that house, we were living in Anaheim. My grandparents owned the house. We came back to, Mom and her sister came to it, and somehow I was there with Mom to get a few things out of the house because it had been sold. Mom told me to go into the pantry and get the curtain rods. I couldn't. I couldn't step foot into that house, especially not into the pantry. Again, nothing specific, just overwhelming dread. Mom finally said, "All right, I'll do it myself." She had spent some years of her childhood in that house. My aunt, Mom's sister, was married in the house. It was during the war, so, World War II, so there were not a lot of big celebrations. So that house had a lot of family history. And somehow, as a child, without knowing all this stuff even, I just knew that house was evil. Can't tell you why. And I'm smoking too much again. But don't worry, once I'm not rambling online, I don't smoke as much. It's just while I'm doing this. They're too expensive anyway. And I'm getting socked with the first of the winter heating bills, even though it's barely autumn, and I don't think I have enough money to cover them. Yeah. Well, I'll settle for what I remember consciously. Things that are on the back burner, but I didn't forget them. I just don't pay attention to them because I had no slot to put them in. I couldn't categorize them or file them. Some of them are in my memoir, My Life on the Edge of Reality. Got hiccups for some reason. But there's all sorts of things. I have enough clear conscious memories. And the whole thing is rather frightening. I used to have nightmares in which the living room floor was crawling with snakes. Poisonous snakes. Must have been a metaphor for something. But only that one house, no other house where I ever lived. The snakes on the floor were in that one house on Lafayette in Culver City. 4080 Lafayette. I think it's Avenue. Yeah. The streets in that area were named after figures from our Revolution and early history. We had Madison, Monroe, Lafayette, Braddock. By the way, now they're still not giving the exact address, but the Entity, movie based on a true story of a woman who was raped by demons, and the cops accused her son of doing it. That was somewhere on Braddock in Culver City, the real thing. Horrible. Culver City has an odd history. The entire town, all the land, was once owned by the Machado family. And when I was growing up there, they still owned a great deal of the land. For example, when the city council wanted to build a bridge across the Bayona Creek, Maria Machado, the matriarch of the family, said, "No, I own the land on both sides and you are not building a bridge." So they didn't. Every year, she would give so much money to her children and grandchildren, up to the limit to where it would not be a taxable gift, so that the family wealth would not be cut in half when she died. We still have death taxes. The Machados still had a working farm when I was a child. Eventually, Maria Machado divided up the land as well, so that each child and each grandchild would not be burdened with these huge inheritance taxes on land and money that the family had already paid taxes on when they earned it or when they bought it. And of course, the annual property taxes. Braddock, there's Africanus, The Entity, that movie based on a true story of a woman who was raped by demons. She lived somewhere on Braddock. I did ask the directors, the two guys who actually did the movie, it was their project, if it might have been in those little houses behind our house on Lafayette. And they said no, but they will not give the exact address. But it was that type of house, a very small house. Yeah, I'm sure the movie dramatized, kind of made stuff up in The Entity, but it is a true story. And the stupid cops tried to they accused her son of doing it, and he was innocent. Ah! Come on, you evil fist. Oh, I'm back now? Okay. I'll read Jan's previous comments. I'm not sure to whom Africanus is referring. Perhaps our half-brother Rick. No such thing as TV, too young to read books, but your imagination was your worst enemy. Well, Jan, maybe something real was going on. Oh, God. Yeah, I remember hiding when I was sent to bed at night. I would hide under the blankets because I thought it might keep the demons or ghosts off of me. I can tell you, I can't tell you what it was, whether it was real, but you dealt with it in a way that was logical and rational, so okay, you did good. Of course, but I've been talking for 2 hours and I'm Eddie M. Oh, the Machados. Well, you know, our oldest brother, our half brother, could charm anyone and get special privileges. Well, Jan, the way I see it, whatever was bothering you, luring you out of your bed when you were a child, you did the right thing. Whether they were real and you stopped it, or whether you imagined it but you did something about it instead of just being terrified and screaming, you did good. I tend to think those things are real. Well, two flagger gargle blap, we're just about at the end. It's been 2 hours. I used to hide under the blankets. I felt safer. I'll tell you something, though. Our mother would send me to bed at 8 o'clock at night. And I was not allowed to get out of bed until 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't care how young you are, nobody sleeps for 12 hours. So, of course, I imagined all sorts of things. I couldn't read a book because I wasn't allowed to have the light on. Electricity costs money. So it was dark and I was terrified and nothing to do for 12 hours. I didn't sleep 12 hours. And once I started school, she'd drag me out of bed in the morning. Wouldn't let me dress myself. She'd dress me, and she always hurt me while she was doing it. She was rough. So I was more scared of her than of the ghosts. It's okay, Gargle. It's okay, Gargle. Can I call you Gargle? I wish it had started at 8 o'clock, which is when I'm supposed to start. Every Tuesday morning in California, 8 a.m. Pacific time, but I overslept and started 2 hours later. Oh, yeah, there are those coast-to-coast guests. One in particular has a long-term affair with a reptilian. I don't think so. But maybe. But I really didn't. I turned off the radio. Didn't want to hear it. Well, unfortunately, Dave, we already have a Dave. I'm thinking of that 1960s commercial. I forget what bank it was, but it was, I forgot her name. Wonderful actress. Anyway, this guy's setting up a new account, and his name is Yana Populus, and she can't say it, so she finally says, "Can I call you Jan?" Well, I guess I could call Gargle the other Dave. Well, I had a transistor radio because they were cheap. They were like 50 or 75 cents. And my parents had a record store, so they sold those cheap little Japanese transistor radios. But I never had a battery for it. I found out years later Mom was giving me the dead batteries from my brother's radio because I wasn't good enough to have a new battery. So I'd listen for a couple minutes and then the battery went dead every time. Oh, sorry, Gargle. I'd better call you Gargle Davy too. Jen is a Davy? Sandy Duncan, yes, thank you, Africanus. Sandy Duncan, that's the first time I remember seeing her on TV. Can I call you Jan? It was a delightful commercial. Probably couldn't do it today. It's racist against Greek people. Because she couldn't say Yana Ropopopoulos. And I had to practice for hours before I could say it. Crystal radio. Now, Phil used to talk about stealing one of the cat's whiskers to glue in to use on the crystal radio. Witta, when I was a teenager and I had a flashlight, I used to hide under the blankets with a flashlight to read because Mom, if she caught me reading, she'd say, "Put down that book and go outside and play." Whether I was reading a book or doing my homework or whatever. I hate Mom. Yeah, a lot of guys had crushes on Sandy Duncan. Did she play? Oh, come on. Peter Pan? I think she did. A remake of Peter Pan. All my books are on Amazon. You can probably find them on other sites, but that's the best place. It works for me, and I know some people insist you've got to go to Lulu or Smashwords or Barnes & Noble, but frankly, Amazon makes it possible for me to actually do it without a huge learning curve. Some of my books are not on Kindle, some are. I've had a problem with people pirating my books from Kindle. They crack the code and or whatever they do, and they put out my books for free because they think writing isn't work or something. But last month I made about $35 on my books. That's not too bad. It's been a couple years since I published a new one, and I am working on it. The Explaining the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick. It's a monumental task, and I hope I'm up to it. But there are a couple of preview editions. One is Kindle only, and it's either 99 cents or free. The other's a little longer, so it's like $2.99, and there's a paperback. Oh, thank you, Jan. That'd be wonderful if more people read my work. I'm not all that terribly upset about people pirating the Kindle editions, but that is why the finished explanation of the exegesis will not be on Kindle. It's too much work to give away. However, the 2 excerpts are on Kindle, so if someone wants to hack into them and distribute them for free, I'm not going to sue them or anything, but I will withhold the finished book because it's going to be a big long one and it might run into 2 volumes. Yeah, Barnes & Noble actually has one of my books, and in 10 years I've never seen a penny. Smashwords, I have a couple books there, but they don't promote them because my formatting can't meet their requirements, and I don't see why not. Amazon doesn't have a problem with them. So I've never made any money on Smashwords. I think I made $3, but it doesn't meet their minimum for payout. Yeah, I don't have hardcover books. I'm going to look into that for the work in progress. It probably deserves a hardcover edition. We'll see. But anyway, I know Amazon is evil and all that, but I keep getting paid for taking surveys and watching ads in Amazon gift cards because PayPal hates those companies that pay you to take surveys and watch ads. Oh, wow. Gil bought everything. I did put one book out of print because I was embarrassed about it. It's basically slapped together and not, it even has factual errors. But I wanted to be on record as saying that nothing was going to happen in 2012. Everyone thought that the world was coming to an end on December 21st of 2012. Didn't happen. So I dashed it off and slapped it together and put it out. The 2012 is nothing. But now it's out of print because it's rather embarrassing. It's not a good book. I don't know whether Walter would want to publish the new book. It's kind of not within the things he does. And he doesn't do hard covers either. He uses Lulu to print his books. The Lost Continent Publishing is a real publisher. Well, Jan, the nicest thing you can do for me is to buy my books. Amazon doesn't have a minimum for payout. It does take them 2 months to pay, but in the publishing world of the big houses like Doubleday, they take a year and sometimes longer to pay you. So why complain about 2 months? They're just making sure they don't have any returns. Someone sends it back and says, I don't want it, it's crap. I've only had returns of Kindle editions, and very rarely. And that's okay. Oh, Terence McKenna. I used to listen to him. Well, I listened to NPR, the radio. I think it was KPFK out of Los Angeles. Late at night, because I had insomnia real bad back then. And that was before I discovered Art Bell. And Terence McKenna was a frequent guest. I think it was Mike Hodell's show. Mike Hodell interviewed Phil twice. Yeah, looking back, 2012 kind of does look like the beginning of the end, but at least we had recovered from the crash of 07 and 08. Oh, Cardinal Sin, don't push me on where to publish a book I haven't written yet. I have only 70 pages so far in the manuscript and lots of notes and outlines. I hate outlining, but I actually did some for this because it's more academic than my previous works. There's an excerpt in the current edition, the current issue of I can't remember the name. Oh gosh. The not the Philip K. Dick periodical, the Emanations. I think it's Emanations Volume 9, and I forget the specific title of it. But Emanations is a free publication online, but you can buy a paperback on Amazon. It's, the size is like, I think 10 by 12. It's, quality. And it has articles and poems and stories by various authors. It's like a magazine in book form. And they will have an excerpt from my work in progress. Yeah, I know Walter doesn't do Kindle. I've decided that the things that are already on Kindle, fine. Some of them I wrote more than 10 years ago. That's fine. I think some are 20 years old. That's my backlist. But the new books, assuming I live to write them, they're not going on Kindle, at least not at first. And I don't think this particular one will ever go on Kindle. It's too much work to throw away. And people don't want to buy a Kindle edition that costs, a whole $10. They don't want to spend $10 for a book that would be 35 or 40 in just the paperback and closer to 100 in hardcover. Go figure. And I'm sure not letting this work go for cheap. Yeah, Terence McKenna and his brother both were interviewed by Art Bell. And, Jen is going to promote me. Good. I don't always do outlines, at least, I might do them in my head, but I've actually written outlines for this book. You know what I used to do? Especially on exams, like the exam for being a substitute teacher. I had to take the same test as credentialed teachers to get my little card. It says write an essay on one of these topics. Well, it didn't say to outline it, but I knew I would get extra points for an outline. So I wrote the essay, and then I looked at it and wrote the outline from what I said in the essay. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes. Yeah, libraries buy ebooks and lend them. And then they have to buy them again. I don't know what can be done about that. I think perhaps libraries should simply have computers on the internet where their patrons can go to Kindle and buy their own books at a discount rate because they're borrowing them and can't keep them because it's on the library computer, and after they're done reading it, it goes away. I really don't want Kindle myself. Not too long ago, there was a big brouhaha. Students, especially college students, had Kindle versions of the books they were assigned to read, and they had their own notes in the margins on the Kindle edition. And for some reason, Amazon took those books away that they had already bought. Just erased them from everybody's Kindle, along with all their class notes and everything that they had added to the file. I don't know if there was a copyright issue or what, but that, and they didn't even warn anybody. Yes, Gil, Dennis McKenna. I believe he's still alive. Poor Terence McKenna got brain cancer. No, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes because you got me so involved and interested. I love my chat room. You guys are smart and really onto things. I like actual books. When I was in school, I would write in the margins of my textbooks, but I rarely write anything in the books I have now. How do you highlight an ebook? Well, actually, you can use the equivalent of the mouse to highlight it and click something, just like you do when you're using the word processor on your computer. But I don't like ebooks. For one thing, it's bad for your eyes. Even if you get the Paperwhite that's black letters on a white background, you're still exposing your eyes to a lot of ultraviolet light. It's bad for your vision. I'm glad you love listening, Jan. I'm actually not very social or sociable. I don't do well in crowds. When I go to a Lions meeting, because I'm a lion, Lioness is all gone, so we just converted to lions. When I'm at a meeting, I sit. We actually have dinner there, so I'll sit at the table next to one person and pretend nobody else is there. It's the only way I can handle it. And even so, from time to time, I have to leave the room. I'm a hermit. But this, on the computer, with just a few really great people, this is awesome. Yeah, there's glasses that block blue light. I told my son about them, and I thought he'd buy me a pair, but he didn't. He just got them for himself. I think they cost about $50. I never miss people as long as I have a cat. I am no longer a cat lady. The most I don't go out and get cats. They just show up, sometimes with a human, sometimes on their own. The most adult cats I ever had was 8 cats. But then my granddaughter didn't want her cat anymore, so I took her in. She was not spayed, so I kept her in the house, right? My granddaughter and her friends used to break in to eat all the cookies and candy and use the shower. Every time they did that, I'd have a $50 water bill in a vacant house. It was vacant at the time because I had another house. And I would just come by every day to take care of the cat. They'd let the cat out. She'd get pregnant. She'd have kittens. And a couple times I was able to send my granddaughter out to find homes for the kittens. Anyway, I don't know how many cats I had before I finally got enough money together to get a cat spayed. It costs a bloody fortune. And back then, the various charities that help you with the cost only came up with like $50. And I had a cat with a litter of kittens that were ready to be weaned, but they all had an eye infection that they get sometimes, mama and her babies. So I basically went broke paying to have mama spayed and have all their eye infections treated. And the 3 different charities all together ponied up $35. I think they cost me close to $400. That's more than my house payment. Of course, my house payment does not include insurance and taxes, so I still have to come up with more money than that. But you see, if you keep a cat in the house all by herself or with, I actually kept one kitten, a male. Males at least don't pop the kittens out on your bed while you're sleeping. He was a kitten. She wasn't going to get pregnant. He was like, and before he grew up and before there could be some inbreeding, I got her spayed. Finally. Anyway, other than that disaster where my granddaughter would break in, eat all the cookies, and let the cat outside, no, I don't have any kitten factories. I have Tora and Sweetie, and they're both spayed. Well, yeah, feeding a cat can be expensive. It depends upon what brand you buy and so forth. That's right. Misty popped a puppy out on the bed. I kind of remember that. Well, Smokey popped out 4 kittens on my bed on July 13th at 1 o'clock in the morning. When the first one came out, she wanted to kill it. She thought it was what had been hurting her. Well, it was. But when the second, and I'm going, no, Smokey, it's a kitty. And when the second one came out, she went, oh, and started cleaning her kitties. Cats. Well, I got a home for 2 of the kitties, and I kept the other 2 and got them spayed because they were all female. And I got Smokey spayed too. She was brought to me already ready to pop out kittens, so there was no getting her spayed beforehand. I try to read comments, Jan, but computers put out blue light too, and let's see, I'm expanding your life. These people in chat are expanding my life. So there, it's mutual. Jan. Yeah. Africanus is going to get me some blue blockers. Excellent. I used to have polarized eyeglasses, the prescription kind, but my eyes changed and I can't focus when I wear them. Okay. So I'm a hermit among hermits. I guess that's why I get along so well with all of you. Yeah, marking a book in any way should be verboten. Phil did not write in his books. I wish he had. I could sell them for a fortune. They make light bulbs too. Oh, now, the other Dave the second wants a cigarette. Yeah. I was going to give up, but my connection came back on as I was about to hit end stream. Now it's been 2 hours and a half. Yeah, well, kittens are easy to treat. They don't struggle as much as Mommy did. It's easy to put eye drops in a kitten's eyes. You know, they were small enough to fit in my one hand. Anyway, and they were in a cage until Mommy Cat's, incision was healed and they were all better. Oh, in the correct comment zone. Well, I'm used to jumping around from topic to topic, and that's okay as long as I'm not the secretary who has to take notes. Trying to quit smoking. Yeah, I've gone as long as 3 days without a cigarette, but it's just not in me to quit entirely. One time my tomcat, Uncle Tiger, he was a sweetie. He brought me a kitten. Apparently one of the feral cats had been eaten by a coyote, and there were these 2 kittens. He brought me a kitten, and then he went back and got another one and brought that one to me. They were 2 kittens, not old enough to be weaned, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I got the dog and cat groomer to take them in, and I bought them kitten milk and a heating pad and so forth. One of them didn't make it, but the other one did and became the ruler of the roost at the groomers. Oh, the Tora videos, yes. Tora is an amazing cat. She's definitely a bobcat hybrid. When I look at her, I don't see how huge she is, but when I try to pick her up, oh man, she's heavy. And she's really long from front to back. She has normal legs, but on that body, they're short legs. Yeah, small moments of happiness from smoking. In some ways, it's even better than chocolate. Advice for a really basic eye infection? Well, I get itchy, weepy eyes sometimes. I don't know whether they're infected, but I just got that eye wash that they sell for people with contact lenses. It's soothing and it's purified, so you don't want to use tap water for this. Tap water, first off, has chlorine that can burn your eyes, and second, isn't necessarily as sterile as you want something that goes in your eye. So I get the bottle of eye wash and use that, and I hate it. You fill the little cup, put it on your eye, and lean back and blink. Oh, I hate the blinking, but you have to do it. That's why I never was much into swimming. I learned to swim. But I don't want to open my eyes underwater in a swimming pool or anywhere else. I don't like it. My eyes are very sensitive. What's this? Blepharitis? Okay, what's blepharitis? I can't look it up. My internet connection can't manage Google and YouTube at the same time. Oh, it's the eye thing? Well, that's interesting because Mom always claimed that Dad married her because he'd be exempt from the draft because they had a child. Our half-brother, Rick. The eyelash. Granulated or inflamed eyelids. That's interesting. Oh, poor Dave II. I had a basal cell carcinoma on my lip. It started out as a sebaceous cyst and then became this little round lump of almost, it looked like a wart, but first the doctor said, oh, that's basal cell carcinoma, and then he took a biopsy, and sure enough, it was. Well, I think Dr. Schwartz is probably retired now. But anyway, a couple years later, after my fourth biopsy, it got infected. And I believe the infection was a staph infection that, lives in hospitals. I was at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center when they did the biopsy. Within 2 days, it was infected and pussy. My immune system said, hey, wait a minute, and started eating the tumor. It's almost completely gone. It had spread from the center of my lip all the way halfway up my nose. It's almost gone. And since then, I've read peer-reviewed studies that say that in cases where cancerous tumors got infected with staph, something about the staph infection triggered the immune system to get rid of the tumor. And that's exactly what's happened to me. I have some scars on my lip, but the tumor's gone. They wanted to do surgery and take off half my nose to make sure they got all the cancer. Now, let me tell you, basal cell carcinoma, yeah, it might kill you 25 or 30 years from now, but at my age, I'll probably be dead anyway. 25 or 30 years from now. It was painful. It would actually hurt. It's like an itch that you can't scratch because the tumor's in the way. I did help it along about once a day, although some days I forgot. I'd get some betadine, which is iodine, but it doesn't have alcohol in it. It's dissolved in water, and dab some betadine on it. It kind of helped get rid of the infection. And then I realized, oh, the tumor's going away too. How interesting. So I decided to wait and see if the tumor went away without the surgery. You can get antibiotic eye drops, but I think you need a prescription. However, yeah, they do make the veterinary kind, for cats, dogs, and horses. I don't recommend it. It won't be the right strength. It might not even be the right antibiotic. I wouldn't put anything in my eyes without asking the doctor first. However, the eye wash that they make for people with contact lenses is safe enough. It's sterile and it's just water. I use it often. The surgeon just basically ripped it off your face. Oh, God, that must have felt awful. Even if it wasn't painful, it felt awful. Over-the-counter Neosporin. Yeah, one time I told the doctor afterwards, I got the Neosporin over the counter and put it in my eyes. But I told the doctor, I was using this, but I de-seed it. That's discontinued because it isn't made for eyes. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea because it isn't as pure as the Neosporin that's made for eyes. And he gave me Neosporin drops. I told him I wanted ointment. It's easier to get into my eye, but he insisted I had to have the liquid drops. On your eyelid when your eyes close, the over-the-counter's probably okay. I was using it on the tumor when it got infected, but it didn't seem to work, so I switched to betadine. Actually, I got the generic kind. It's an iodine. It's the same thing. A solution of iodine in water. The little glass bottle with the glass rod, that's dissolved in alcohol and it stings. Oh, you had an alien parasite removed. Ah, good, Jen. You got the eye wash made for dry eye, and some days, and I'm sure it must be allergies, my eyes will feel dry all day long, but when I lie down to go to sleep, the water just pours out and runs down my cheeks and into my hair. Yes, just like that movie Alien, except it was in his chest. I feel the yes. Well, I got mine at Rite Aid. It's you can't get the crystals. Iodine crystals look like metal. Iodine really is sort of a metal, but if Rite Aid doesn't have the iodine solution, I'll get the bottle. This is one area where you can go to the animal supply, even the feed store, and get the kind made for animals because it's exactly the same. Let me get the bottle. Okay. Mine, the brand name is Top Care. Povidone/iodine solution, 10%. First aid antiseptic, Kills germs in minor burns, cuts, and scrapes. Let's see. Inactive ingredients: citric acid, disodium phosphate, glycerin, non-oxynol 9, purified water, sodium hydroxide. Ooh, that's a... Okay. So providone-iodine is like a type of iodine. Don't worry about it. It's equivalent to 1% available iodine. Here's... Try to get there so you can see the bottle. Top Care Providone-iodine. What's that on the bottom? Oh, compared to betadine solution active ingredient. So it's the same as betadine, which I always thought should be betadine, but it's betadine. Try to hold this still long enough for you to see it. I got it, I'm pretty sure I got this at Rite Aid. But they have betadine. I think their bottle is green, but it might be white. It's just a plastic bottle with iodine solution. Well, Jan, anybody whose sleep schedule is disrupted can suffer from parasomnia, where weird things happen to you. I suggest you look it up on Google because I can't remember all the things, all the symptoms that you might get, but it's up to and including sleepwalking. Yeah, well, I like to say dash because it's easier. There's only one syllable, but I know it's a hyphen. It's also called an N dash. We N hyphen dash equals hyphen. Come on, PHEN. And then there's an M dash, which is a dash. The hyphen is about the same length, same width as an N, and the M dash is about the same width as an M. Yeah. So I guess if you're a daydreamer, you might have parasomnia. And you know what I've found it's getting more rare now. If I can't fall asleep, what really helps is a cup of hot tea. But sometimes I just take a Benadryl and it knocks me out. But other people say the Benadryl wires them. So you don't know what you're going to get. Or I'll take chlortrimeton. Chlorpheniramine maleate is the pharmaceutical name. Chlortrimeton is the brand. It's also an allergy med. Sometimes that'll put me to sleep, but not during the day when I'm supposed to be awake. The Benadryl will make me really sluggish and sleepy during the day when I want to be awake. Anyway, yeah, I use 2 hyphens to make an M dash, and the word processor turns it into a dash. But there is a dash on my keyboard, an M dash. But you have to hit shift and then hit the dash key. That's 2 strokes instead of 1. Hi, it's almost 3 hours. 2 hours and 51 minutes and 20 seconds. Jeez. Well, don't take Benadryl if it does that to you. Puts me to sleep. One time, for sleeplessness, for insomnia, the doctor prescribed, that tranquilizer, the old-fashioned, drop it in your girlfriend's drink and she falls asleep. Meprobromate. I don't remember the brand name. Meprobromate. Tranquilizers. He said to take them during the day so that when it's time to sleep, you're not all wound up. Those things wired me. And they used to put them in what's called a Mickey Finn. Put it in the girlfriend's drink to knock her out, or in the guy's drink to knock him out so you can beat him up and kidnap him. Well, I'm flattered you think I'm the best, Jim, but I think all my chat room people are the best. It's a mutual admiration society. Well, actually, Jan, I've researched tea. What it has is not actually caffeine. It's a related compound that your body turns into caffeine. But yeah, I guess it can wire you, but I've consumed so much caffeine for so many years, especially when I was a student, that I can drink a cup of hot coffee and still fall asleep, even if I make it really strong. Well, yeah, they used to say the caffeine in tea was not available and wouldn't wire you, but they found that it isn't actually technically true. But a lot depends on how strong you make the tea and how fast you drink it. I find tea comforting, but some people do get wired on it. People are different. There is no one size fits all. Like the idiots who are pushing the vaccine on people who already had the disease. Now, my doctor wouldn't give me the MMR because I already got the measles a couple years ago. She said, "No, you don't need it. Because you had the measles. Wait a few years. But if you've had COVID, it doesn't matter. They want you to take not 2, but 3 shots now." Well, I took one. Had terrible side effects the worst of it lasted 10 days. I'm still getting a red itchy rash from time to time. But during those first 10 days, I was putting ice packs on my arms. They were so hot it hurt my hands to touch my arms. I didn't have a fever, but I had a red, itchy, burning rash, started at the injection site, traveled across my shoulders and the back of my neck to the other arm, and then it traveled to the front of my neck and my chest. It subsided after 10 days, but I continued to have rashes on my legs and feet, itchy rashes, and on my arms from elbow to wrist. Originally, it was elbow to shoulder. I'm not going to take another one of those. That was the Pfizer shot. I'm waiting for an alternative, some other shot, maybe Johnson & Johnson, or maybe this Novo whatever that's awaiting approval. Yeah, kind of reminds me of shingles, except I didn't have blisters. I had blisters when I had shingles. The Mickey Finn I learned about reading a Dashiell Hammett novel. I think it was Dashiell Hammett. Anyway, one of those detective stories with all kinds of crime and evil. Anyway, the chemical related to caffeine that's in tea does have a slightly different effect on you. But basically, your body turns it into caffeine. The one thing I really don't want is iced tea. I don't mind if my cup of tea gets cold. I'll still drink that. But if it starts out cold, it has a bitter background that I just can't stand. Blech. And oh, when I had to take the purge for the colonoscopy, the stuff they make you drink, tons of it, was sweetened with sucralose. Sucralose makes me ill. It gives me nausea and an upset stomach. Well, I managed to drink down the night before. I managed to get through that dose. In the morning, I got through maybe 2/3 and I was about to vomit, so I quit. Sucralose is a really nasty artificial sweetener. Doesn't taste too bad, but it makes me so ill. Yeah, Gargle or Dave the Second, I'm going to have to go too because I've been on for 3 hours. 2 hours, 58 minutes, and 30 some odd seconds. See you guys later. Gotta go. Thank you all for listening. By the way, the first hour anyway, was about free will and the experiments in the mid 20th century on agency, split brain, and free will, which kind of put the materialist idea that all you are is your brain, there's nothing but matter and no such thing as spirit, it puts that to rest with actual science. But don't tell Richard Dawkins. He won't even listen. Yeah, I'm with you, Jen. Drink it cold because you forget it, but it's still okay when it got cold after being hot. I don't know why. Okay, guys. Well, I don't think my electric bill on the computer is what's killing me. It's the electric heater I had to run because it was 30 degrees this morning. Or overnight, I should say. The first time I woke up, it had warmed up to 35. And then at 10 in the morning, it had warmed up to 45. Yeah, those who worship in the hallowed halls of science ignore actual science because they have their philosophy. And if it doesn't fit their philosophy, it can't be true. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks, Jen, Africanus, Gargle, Dave. Who else is here? Let's see. Participants. Oh, Witta, of course. And Gil and Dave and everybody. Catch you all later. Bye. True, Africanus, conscious and unconscious actually are... Oh, Howard. Bye, Howard. Thank you all. Yeah, consciousness is not conscious here, unconscious there. There are a lot of things in between. It depends upon how and when and where you pay attention. Bye.